Ravendreth. One of the few good things that came out of the Shadowlands expansion in World of Warcraft. Home to Gothic architecture, a nice black and red color palette, and one of the more memorable characters in the entire game. But this creature is one of my favorite models, the Sinstone Golem. I really wanted to craft one of these for myself, so I got to work and planned on paper what exactly I need to make it. Turns out I already have most of the materials required. All I need to find is a suitable body. As the texture and the shape suggests, this is literally a piece out of the ground. Luckily I stumbled across this piece of asphalt while I was walking the dog, and it was nearly perfect for the size and shape. I had to trim it a little bit, as it was way too heavy and bulky, and not in the best possible shape. With a few strikes with a hammer and a makeshift chisel out of a screwdriver, I was able to trim the piece to a more manageable size and weight. Now, this mausoleum you see here is nowhere documented or recorded. That's because it was at this moment I thought about recording the craft, so this is my mistake. I will show, however, from my paper plans, what I did to make the mausoleum. The mausoleum, from now on referred to as the head, consists of 4 identical sides and a pyramid in the middle. The size of the drawing on the paper is 1:1 with the real thing, so I used my drawing to cut out the pieces of cardboard and stack them on top of each other. After they were the right thickness, I smeared polymer clay on the seams and the sides to hide the ugly bits and create the illusion of solid stone. Now, I had to make the top of the body flat, so the head would be glued firmly on top of it. I used a combination of Dremel tool as well as a file, marking the corners as the head fit only on certain position, maximizing the surface area for a good contact. Superglue was added to hold the head in place while the resin hardened. I was not convinced that the head would stay attached, so I added pieces of extra cardboard and a toothpick to fill in the gaps. I saw this lighter at the store and I thought that the light in it was perfect for this project. The head needed to glow red, which indicated that this golem is anima powered. While I mess with the light, here's some facts about Sinstone Golems. They are amalgamations of Sinstones that consists of souls who failed their redemption and they were sent to the maw. The golems can form on their own, but Ravendreth alchemists have been seen expediting this process. Sometimes entire headstones attached together to create larger golems. Usually if a person's soul was very powerful in life, let it be from acts of good or evil, it didn't matter. They would receive larger Sinstones. As the golem grows, it gets to absorb more rogue anima that flows in the Shadowlands, making itself even more powerful. Anima in Ravendreth is often depicted as this red light. Now that the light is assembled and a switch is in place, albeit with a bad connection, as it was flickering, the concept was proven successful and I was happy with it for now. The legs of the golem needed to be heavy, preferably more heavy than the body and the head, as otherwise it wouldn't stay upright. That is why I placed real rocks at the feet, and covered them with the headstones, polymer clay, and bind them all together using wire. The wire would act as a root system for the rose plant that typically grows around these golems. Now a bit of my own opinion. I think that the explanation of why these amalgamations of Sinstones can animate is a bit silly. I think that the whole body is controlled by the rose bush. This makes way more sense, as the rose bush is an actual living thing and the rocks are not. The smaller headstones are made out of wood. The shape of the end of an ice cream stick was perfect. The larger headstones also have a core of wood, which is just the rest of the ice cream stick that I cut the ends off. They were glued together and covered with cardboard for extra thickness. In order for the polymer clay to harden, the piece has to be baked in 110 degrees Celsius for about 10 minutes. Once the clay cools down, it is no longer moldable or malleable. It is essentially like plastic. After that, I do this multiple times throughout the build to ensure that I don't ruin it. A small test fit to see whether the legs will hold. The body is a lot heavier than the legs, but I'm hoping that the legs are rigid and wide enough to hold the golem upright. Seems for now that it does. So, I attach the legs permanently to the body by those wires that I left on the ends. Sadly, one of the legs broke off after the bake, but that is okay. I can always glue it back together. The bigger issue was the light, which could not handle the heat of the oven, and it had died. No amount of connection fixes could turn it back on, so I think the batteries themselves had died from the heat. This tells me, never bake batteries in the oven. That was probably common sense, but I didn't think of it at that time. Now, it's time for the arms. The arms were built exactly like the legs were, just that the large headstone goes to the shoulder, the smaller ones on the forearms, and the fingers are just wire, because the golem's hands are made out of the roots. One more bake later, a bit of resin, and the arms are now attached. The in-game model has its arms floating on the sides, and last time I tried, I wasn't able to make them levitate. So I just glue the wire on the head while leaving some space between the shoulder stones and the mausoleum. To ensure that I cover up everything from the golem, I painted the entire thing black. If I miss a spot with the grey and brown paint, it'll still be at least black, and not white or yellow like the clay is. Usually the cracks and hard to reach spots remain black, and it would act as a shadow. Then, all the stone parts, which is nearly everything from the model, they needed to be grey. I started with the darker grey color and put lighter grey as the highlights, to really bring out all the detail and shapes to light. All the roots and wire parts need to be brown, to make them stand out as the roots of the rose plant. The rose bushes needed to be red, and I had nothing that resembles small-scale rose bush. So I had these fake trees that I had bought earlier for something else, and I painted them red. The red paint was diluted with water, so I could submerge the trees entirely into the paint to really get everything painted. The trees were a bit hydrophobic, and they didn't want to get painted, so a light tap with the brush to drown them did the trick. I cut the trees in smaller bits to attach them around the golem, placing the bushes close to the roots with superglue. I did end up adding more lighter red on the rose, as the previous paint dried and it looked more brown than red. Lastly, I attached this red LED light that I ordered online, which had a turn switch built into it. I had to make a new hole on the head to fit the light in. And there it is, Sinstone Golem from Ravendreth.